All right, I guess we'll get started. All right. Well, for those of you that were here before, thank you for staying. I know I'm about one beignet away from you guys to do that, or I just looked at the Eagles score and I'm not happy that they should be winning by more. So I don't know. I hope by the time this session is finished and you guys have learned a lot more, they will have won at that point, but we'll see. Any other Eagles fans in here? Yeah, all right. I like a person in a blue sweater that's an Eagles fan as well. But this is sort of the follow-up to the last session. And we actually have three presenters today, myself and Melissa Heim, who's the chair of the Pharmacy Tech Accreditation Commission, and she has much more of a real job as well. And Tate Trujillo, who's the past chair of the commission and also a very extensive job too, and he's going to tell you about himself too. And I always say, I didn't go into it last time, but the volunteers on the Pharmacy Tech Accreditation Commission and all of our commissions, the residency commission too, they're pretty high-level volunteer committees. They do a lot. I always say they're the least paid because they get paid nothing, obviously, and they do so much in these roles. They go on the surveys with us, and we have others that go on surveys with us as well that are here too, and work on the reports with us, do true assessments on the surveys, and spend a lot of time outside of their organizations that they have to go back to, and I really appreciate that. And ASHP appreciates that as well, all the work you do to ensure the quality of pharmacy tech education and training for the profession, and especially now. And I know that Melanie mentioned the shortage and all of the issues going on in that vein, and you have that in your facilities for training, for getting more students into your programs. Those of you that have programs already, it's not it's a universal thing from all areas. It's sort of, we talk about a continuum in pharmacy, it's a continuum in education to get the pharmacy technicians in that. So we don't appreciate you enough for that. And I just wanted to say that this afternoon. So thank you for that. And I see Bob in the audience, and he's on our commission. I see Ann does surveys for us. And while I have glasses on, I'm not seeing far away as I'd like to, but those of you that have done surveys for us, could you please stand up? Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So, okay. Well, I'm going to start the session this afternoon, and we're going to do a 1, 2, 3 act. I'm going to start, and then Melissa's going to, actually Tate is going to do the second part of the presentation on the update from the Pharmacy Tech Accreditation Commission, and then Melissa's going to end, also known as Missy. We'll finish the presentation today, and if there are any questions, please feel free. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave at a certain point. Please excuse me from that because I'm going to have to go to the residency town hall. But again, thank you for joining us today. Okay, so we have an agenda today. We'll talk about the PTAC, the accreditation timeline, program growth and breakdown, PTAC initiatives, the commonly cited findings, and questions. So for those of you that weren't here before, I'll tell you a little bit about the PTAC. ASHP's been accrediting tech programs since 1982-83. In 2012, the NABP, the National Associations of Boards of Pharmacy, requested that ACPE participate in the Pharmacy Tech Education and Training Program accreditation. Because in the past, and I was there for it, I've been doing this for 29 years. It's hard to believe next week will be my 29th anniversary. A lot of programs, a lot of pharmacy institutions thought this was fully a hospital pharmacy. Not even health system, it was a hospital pharmacy accreditation exercise. And we really wanted to get to the grassroots level. We wanted to get to the different boards of pharmacy and expand and make this a mandatory thing, listen to me at this part of the day, excuse me for that, for all pharmacy technicians to go through an accredited program. And to get to this, and to still get to this goal, we're not there by far, NABP felt that having the organization that accredits pharmacy schools, pharmacy education, pharmacy continuing education, it would be more of a collaboration. It would be more seen as more of a global way for all of the avenues of pharmacy to see this. So we met with them, the organizations, all the powers that be, all the big cheeses met about this. And in 2013, the PTAC was formed, the Pharmacy Tech Accreditation Commission, through the ASHP ACP collaboration. And the PTAC is the working group. The actual overarching bodies, the true last voted that have the authority of this, are the two organizations. So the PTAC recommended actions require approval from both of those boards. And the first recommendations to both of those boards occurred respectively in the June 2015 meetings. So the functions of the PTAC we talked about at the last meeting really is to ensure the quality of pharmacy tech education and training. We solicit input. I'm the secretary, but really you guys work on everything. Solicit input from key stakeholders, strategically advance the profession. What is strategically advancing the profession? Periodically reviewing the standards and revising them. And I neglected to introduce Eric. He heads up standards. He's our director of that group and ensures that we're in line with that. And he makes sure all of this stuff happens too. I think that's why I neglected to mention him, because he's always behind and in front of the scenes. And they review the findings for accreditation surveys and the responses. They're out there helping you with your programs. They recommend the accreditation status, strategic planning, and work on various changing laws and regulations, and just ensure the outcomes for training structures. So what's the general timeline for program accreditation? We'll go through this again for those that weren't here. Application first goes to Accreditation Services. You have to have a student in a program. The survey scheduled typically after the first class of graduates. That's what we try to do. Sometimes that doesn't happen as fast as we'd like, but the accreditation is retroactive to the date of application. Upon completion of the survey, the site has 75 days to respond back, and the programs go to their specific PTAC meeting of when they were reviewed. So depending on when they were reviewed, they'll go to the May or October meeting, and then they'll go to the specific Board of Directors meeting. If they go to the May PTAC, they go to the June meeting. If they go to October, they go to the January. And then the letters of accreditation typically go in July and February. We sometimes have programs that don't get accredited, that don't meet the standards, because everything is standards driven. We'd like everybody to, because we want the programs to get accredited. We want to work with you to get accredited. But if they're not meeting the standards, they don't. We've had programs that reapply and work towards that, and they become accredited, but most do. To give you some numbers, this is our program agenda from both of our PTAC meetings since we saw you last December in Anaheim. We had in October, the last meeting that we just had, there were 13 new programs reviewed for initial accreditation, 9 reviewed for reaccreditation. There were 9 midterm reports. Midterm reports are those to give us the progress that are full cycle accreditation. 15 special case reports. Those are programs that provide us progress from their last accreditation that were not full cycle. They might have had, we requested reports at a 1-year or a 3-year point of their accreditation. From our May meeting, we had 8 new programs reviewed for initial accreditation, 14 reviewed for reaccreditation, 19 midterms, and 20 special cases. Here's a breakdown of our accredited or candidate programs. So when a program applies for accreditation, they're in candidate status until they're accredited. We have 1 military program, 5 chain, 4 retail, 93 in that community college, university college, 4 College of Pharmacy presently, 7 distance learning, 5 grocery store, 36 health system. This is where we're seeing large growth in the hospital health system arena. 18 high school, 21 proprietary. They're the ones that are, self-owned type of schools, and 59 VOTEC. Programs in the directory, we currently have about 257. I say about because that's ever-changing. 142 sites that just have entry level, 45 advanced, and 70 institutions that offer both entry and advanced. This is the states. The numbers might be a little different. I mentioned in the last session my TechnoSav ability is pretty minimal, so Eric helped me, and these are the states. The numbers may not be what they are, but the blue states indicate where we're present, where there are accredited programs. We used to have a program in Montana. We used to have one in Alaska. We used to have one in Hawaii. We used to have one in Oklahoma and Missouri and Alabama and Massachusetts, actually. So we have to get back in those states, and then we have to get into Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire and Delaware. So it would be great to see programs in all the 50 states. So what are the initiatives? These are the big things we've been working on in the past year since we last met in December of last year. We worked on and completed a promotion of the pharmacy tech profession to high school students and beyond. One of the big things we were thinking of is, or we had discussed for several years, was how do we get the word out? And I think as an organization, ASHP, and you've seen a lot of it, has worked hard to get out pharmacy. We've had, even in my local paper, the Washington Post, there was a half-page ad on pharmacy. Before that, it was a different time we started working on this, and you'll see a picture on another slide. We work with the TPTS, and we have what's the word for it? The web or something? It's a new word for an advertisement. Again, my savviness. But we have a great card that can be downloaded and sent out. The pharmacy organizations can send it out to whoever you'd like to advertise the value of a pharmacy technician, or high schools can, as well as to any type of group to talk about the profession of the pharmacy technician, and it's great. You'll see it on a future slide. Supporting accredited pharmacy technician education and training programs as states' laws change. That's ongoing. We did a lot with Virginia. I helped to write the FAQs. Anytime a program applies in Virginia, we act very quickly to get that program reviewed. And there are other programs that are transitioning to different legislative activities that they may be going towards all the technicians need to go through an accredited program, or it might be a selection that you could have gone through an accredited program, or another alternative to be a technician in the state. We're looking to grow an accredited pharmacy tech education and training programs. We're seeing growth specifically in the health system programs, and we've developed tools in that area. The development of the toolkit for health system program development, and that's on our website for health system pharmacy administrators to use to bring to the C-suite to substantiate the importance of developing a program for the staffing shortage, and utilize the program to either train people within their department or outside of their department for job growth within their health system, to get those in other occupations within their facility into the programs, and that's been successful. So please feel free to download that. There's information regarding career ladders, and the slides are there already. You don't have to do anything with them. We completed, Matt Kelm and one of our staff members, a past fellow, Hannah Post, worked on developing guidance for credit for prior learning for meeting accreditation standard hours, and that's completed, and on our website now. It works well for health systems, for those that you want to train that's already worked at your facility and they'd like to complete a program, and certainly to help them in your career ladder if they've gone through an accredited program. And there's some guidance on how to do that. And, maybe in looking at, we don't tell you how to do portfolio development, but maybe in using that as part of substantiating how to get them to figure out how many hours that may take for the 100% of the program, or the 400 hours. The annual survey, and please thank you for your patience. We decided to send out the annual survey later this year than in usual years. We usually would send it out in May, but many of the schools are out in the summer and we had difficulty in getting the responses back. We ended up sending it out a little later than usual. Probably a lot of you left on Friday. You should have seen it in your computer on Friday, because Goldie and our office staff sent it out. And thank you for your patience. Many of you got my email back on that, and Eric did a fabulous job on putting together that survey this year. It'll be due back January 20th, and it's very important to complete that survey. Part of the regulations, one of the areas talks about continued accreditation of a program. And one of the areas is, if you don't provide us back certain things that we ask for from a documentation standpoint, your accreditation can be discontinued. That documentation includes completion of this survey, so please complete the survey. It's essential for us getting an idea of bandwidth of how many technicians are out there that go through accredited programs, so we'll know, when boards of pharmacy ask us how many of the pharmacy technicians are available in the workforce. We will probably be using it as an annual report for a reporting mechanism in the accreditation world soon to come. We'll tell you about that later if it goes through, and a variety of other things looking at trends. And we're updating the standards. We already updated the regulations. I neglected to put that in here, and that's going to our board of directors in January. So they'll be on the website. Oh, exactly. Yes, and in updating the standards, very important point that Eric just made, there's a link in your survey to respond to regarding the standards, and there's some questions and for comments. Maybe you'd like to speak to that a little bit, what you'd like to see in that. Anything else?
Just real quick, just for your information or a reminder, you should have gotten that email. That's your annual accreditation survey about your program demographics, stats, and whatnot. But separately, we're soliciting your comments, your feedback on what you'd like to see change with the standard. As we're looking through, as the PTAC is considering changes based on needs, based on what you're doing out in the field. But are there things that you see that could enhance your program? Are there gaps in the standard currently? Are there redundancies? Are there things that could be completely removed? So there's a separate link in that email. It's not related to your annual survey program data. It's just separate solicitation for feedback. But please do submit, because we look at all the comments that you submit and we consider them all. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Last time we revised the standard for 2019, we looked at about 500, 600 comments, and they were all taken into consideration in the revision of the standards. So it is important, and we do take your comments and your feedback into consideration. It's very important. So that standard is in progress, and it will go through an extensive review process. We'll ask for comments. We won't have the standard out until we have all the tools finished that go with it. You'll have a new model curriculum, guidance document. There'll be enough education that will go out with that. Eric will be working on it. I will. This group up here will be working on it. The commission will be working on it. And it will be essential that all of those pieces will be together before you get it to work on, to use for your programs. This is the promotion of the pharmacy technician profession to high schools. It's on the TPTS website. You have a variety of these other pieces here, and this is where you can find it to download it under the TPTS website. The health system toolkit, just to give you a little more about it, we did a literature review of the implementation. There's some articles on there, guidance on performing the business analyses with a SWOT analysis and PESTEL analysis, and looking at job descriptions and capital resources, as well as a sample strategic plan and funding streams. A little at the higher level, you don't have to go through all of that as well, but ideas with that, opportunities for career advancement and compensation opportunities, as well as a list of FAQs. We tried to think of any question you would have regarding starting a tech program. We talked about the credit for prior learning, recognition for exemption for prior experience or competency, especially in response to staffing shortages and staff development, staff retention, and improving job satisfaction and engagement, and of course, promoting medication safety. And there's a link on here as well, and it's on our website. And we talked about the annual survey and it being required, and I believe at this point I'm going to turn this over to Tate. And thank you again for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tate Trujillo. My day job is Executive Director of Pharmacy Clinical Nutrition in the Indiana Poison Center at Indiana University Health in downtown Indianapolis. I'm in the current role of immediate past chair for the commission, and I happen to have a number of admin residents with me, and so they're the ones that get to do this work, because all my confidential pages come through, they get to sort through them, so that's why I get the common findings. One of the things I would say before I kind of start hitting the common findings, but as you start thinking about your feedback as it relates to the new standards, when you look at the standards and you relate it to your program, you're like, well, I don't know why this is here, I don't know why this is here, we should require more here because you're trying to push. Remember that ASHP, ACPE, and the PTAC Commission, the standards that we're writing is covering all programs. So this is proprietary, this is the community colleges that have no intrinsic pharmacy functions at all the way to employer-based, retail, distance learning. And so when you start thinking about why is something in there, I would ask if you think a little broader outside of your program and go, what's the need for it? Why is this here? How does this value me? And that's a lot of reasons why. And if you understand the foundation to the standards, you're like, all right, that makes a lot more sense. So as I go through some of these, I think that'll make this a little clear. I don't have a lot to do in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the top 10 or so most common findings. There's only one that's really curriculum-based that's a common theme, and that's still med histories and the med reconciliation process and the training the students in that space. The big ones still relate to simulation, the equipment and supplies, the advisory committee. The advisory committee is the one that I always say is you have to understand the why. For the health systems, the advisory committee probably has a less value because you are all actively practicing. But for a community college and a program director that may not be practiced, and we have program directors that haven't been in a pharmacy in 15, 20 years, they're just a faculty member somewhere at a small community college, they need the advisory committee to like, what's current practice and what's the right things. And so understanding that volume and why those pieces are there. The other ones, and there's a lot, I have slides after this that get into some of the details, but a lot of the lower parts, the upper number standards, really it's a lot of paperwork and just making sure you dot I's and cross T's as it relates to your jury reports and common findings. So the advisory committee, I think that the biggest key here is, particularly for health systems, don't make it more complicated than it needs to be, and don't recreate the wheel. So if you already have a tech advancement work group that's working on a tech career ladder, you're getting leaders that are in the operations and that are covering multiple places, if you already have that group in existence, like, they can be your advisory committee. Like, you don't have to create a separate bucket. You need to make sure you do all the right things in terms of approving sites, approving the curriculum, and have those votes and that documentation. But don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. And our standard says they have to meet, the advisory committee has to meet a minimum twice a year. But if you have a group that's meeting monthly as it relates to tech recruitment, tech career ladders, tech development, all of that. I know my organization does, and I'm like, why do we have two separate groups? We're just going to put these two groups together to make one. But make sure you do the key components of it by vote, and then have those minutes. Recognizing, again, don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. If you need to do a vote and it needs to be an e-vote, do an e-vote. Like, it's okay to do the e-votes. Get them documented, and then you can have the meeting time to discuss the important things. The strategic plan, understanding that many times, most all of the surveys I do, strategic plan ends up getting cited, and it really comes down to thinking on a broader scale, where is this program going, and how is it helping the community at large? And the community can be defined however you want to define it, but again, making sure you have the right membership on there, making sure you have a technician on there, if you have a graduate, all of those type of things, to make sure you get that feedback in terms of that, or that's the advisory committee, but making sure that that group is speaking to what the strategic plan is, where are we going, what's the 3 to 5 year vision, and what is measurable. A lot of the strategic plans I see is we want to maintain a pass rate or a graduation rate of 100%. I'm like, is that really what you want to do? Like, that's, if someone's not meeting the needs, then they don't need to graduate. Like, if they don't meet the step, so then you kind of, but what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish for your organization and for your program? As it relates to 10.2 simulation, first, as it relates to 10.2b, the supplies, making sure the students have what they need to have. Again, don't make it more complicated. It doesn't have to be super expensive. It can be, counting different types of beans, going to raid the retail pharmacies as to with empty bottles, so they have the right bottles. You don't have to buy the demo, all the demo vials and all of that. The other component as it relates to the simulation, and we see this a lot, is that the components of all the steps are taught in isolation, and the students don't do it from start to finish. Like, they don't get the opportunity to practice, and sometimes they only practice it, if they do it from start to finish, they only do it once. The intent here is that they have repetition. When they're in lab, they do things over and over again to get good practice with it. But it's important that they get the process. If you're doing the prescription side of things, the receiving the script, making sure it's, all the key components are there, it's entered in the system, printing a label, counting, labeling, getting it checked, that whole process, start from start to end, and not just the individual components by themselves. And we see the individual components by themselves a lot. Be creative on the medication history component as it relates to, this is a good way to say, hey, students, go do a med history of family members, your roommate, document that back, bring that back in, and then you can still give them feedback. Do they have all the key components? What questions do they ask? And you can, as the instructors can go through and review that with them. The easy documentation stuff, the certificate, many times is missing some key components. I would highly recommend you look at the standards. What are the key components? It has to have entry and or advanced level listed. It needs to say ASHP ACPE, candidate or accredited status, whatever you are. But making sure you have all the right signatures, program director, the CEO type roles. So making sure all those key stuff are on there. And the other easy documentation is national exam pass rates on public facing materials. It's not hard. Get it somewhere that is public facing so people can see it. And you have to remember the whole foundation and the idea behind this is as it relates to if students are looking and are comparing programs, we want to give them the idea that they have a high likelihood of going to your program. You have a 90% pass rate or an 80% pass rate. That's what they should expect. I mean, we do see accredited programs that have 20% pass rates. Is that, give them public-facing material so they can be able to make those decisions. Learners' assessments in 14.1, still all related to documentation. This should be criteria-based in all phases of training, specifically in simulation and experiential. Make sure you have the checklists that they get checked off on and get feedback on, criteria-based feedback. And the students should understand how they can improve, what they need to do to get better. Many times, and I just did a couple sites recently where it's like 100%, 100%, 100%. I'm like, okay, you graded them, but there's no criteria-based feedback as to what they needed to do to get better. And really, were they 100% on all the simulations? Because I also question that sometimes. As we get to the end here, understanding the quality of your program, being purposeful in terms of doing surveys of students, graduates, and trying to find that right time of when your graduates are out. So is that 3 months, 6 months when they're out in the real world? Is it a year that you can get some feedback back to go, did we teach you all the right things that you need to know to do the job? And then the employers. And I think this is a challenge sometimes for health systems that they're in the employer base, because it's like, well, I'm hiring my own, I'm the employer, like how do I get my own feedback? It's okay to get feedback from either your staff, the leaders in those areas, because a lot of times the tech leadership, the tech program leadership is slightly different than who's managing those areas. And so still do a survey, still get that feedback and start bringing that information in. And make sure that all that feeds back into your continuous quality improvement process. With that, I'll hand it over to Missy for closing up with the report outs.
Great. Thank you so much, Tate. My name is Melissa Hyam. My day job is I'm the BJC Regional Director of Pharmacy for our Academic Medical Campus. BJC Healthcare is in a health-based system in St. Louis, Missouri. And I'm currently serving as the chair of the Commission on Credentialing. And to close out the time with you guys today, we thought we would share some additional information. Lisa got into it a little bit in the previous hour, but some additional information related to the survey report out and those steps following the conclusion of your survey. So as Lisa mentioned earlier, after your day of survey and the touring that we do, there will be a verbal report out of your findings. It's important to take really good notes at this time because you won't actually get the report for another 30 days. So come prepared, come ready, bring extra friends to help you capture everything, because there are some things you're going to want to start working on right away and not wait a full 30 days before you begin taking any action related to the findings. So one thing that helps a lot is bringing a copy of that pre-assessment checklist to this report out at the end of the survey. It helps because we throw around the numbers of the standard, and instead of just trying to write down 10.2 and 14.1, you can really look at those and then take your notes on that document as well, and it just helps provide that additional clarity as we're going through a lot of things. This is also the time for you guys to ask questions. I think Lisa mentioned it. We want to make sure that we've captured everything correctly. This is your program that you live and breathe and work in every day, and we are getting a snapshot of it. And we don't always get it right. So if we misunderstood something or didn't see a document or a piece of information that would clarify the particular element of the standard that we had a concern about, that's your time to bring it up. So bring it up, ask us questions. There are times that, we change things right there during the report out because you provide the additional information that's needed to ensure compliance with the standard. But once the survey team leaves, changes to the report will not occur. So that's why it's really important to be prepared at that report out time. And as Lisa said, there won't be surprises. So when we're going through the day and we've reviewed documents and we're touring and we're seeing all of the workspaces and that sort of thing, we'll be bringing up items that we have some area of concern about that will be showing up on the report. So you shouldn't see anything at the time of this report out or hear anything that we haven't already discussed. Okay. Tate can laugh at me too. I'm also not very tech savvy, much like Lisa, so he takes care of us. When you are responding to the survey report, it's very important that you respond to every finding. Include as much information as you can, but be concise and to the point. And as I mentioned, for those things, since you don't get a copy of your report after we share it with you verbally for 30 days, go ahead with your notes that you've taken and start working on some of those simple things that you can solve quickly. Get those taken care of. If it's updating a document or modifying, getting some additional equipment, meaning supplies. Equipment's not always one of those things you can get quickly, but borrowing things from the retail pharmacy, empty bottles, that sort of thing, you can start doing that. So resolve some things as soon as you can. But when you are responding to the report, the details matter. You want to be as specific as you can related to each finding. So you want to provide what the change that you've made and then show the evidence of that change. Specific action plans with timelines and actual examples of things that you've changed. It's very important. We're not just looking for, oh yes, we'll be talking about that at our next meeting. We want to know that you've actually taken steps to correct the finding. And then finally, Lisa mentioned this as well. Reach out to your lead surveyor with questions regarding your survey response. If you aren't quite clear on what all you should include, please reach out. All of the lead surveyors for the technician accreditation or the technician training and education programs are very invested and engaged in this work, and they're more than happy to help you because they want you to succeed. So I wanted to include a few examples here for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to participate in a survey for your program yet and create a response. So if you were cited, as Tate mentioned, one of the higher rates of citation comes with the advisory committee. So let's say that you were cited on the advisory committee not having a sufficient diversity of pharmacists and technicians. A vague response that won't show the commission any progress towards that finding would be something like, we will discuss modifying our advisory committee membership at an upcoming meeting. You may very well be planning to do that, but that doesn't really show any real progress towards resolution. You want to have taken the steps and provide the evidence. So the advisory committee membership review has been completed. New members have been added. See our updated roster and documentation of the most recent meeting attendance below. So as much detail and evidence that you can provide to the resolution of that finding is very important. And here are some additional examples, because the things that you're able to resolve, I do want to share. Things that you're able to resolve before it goes to the commission for review, the commission doesn't really spend time on those things that you've resolved. We're really going to focus on those things where you're still, it's still a work in progress. So try to get as much completed as you can with the evidence and specificity that's needed to document that. So on the left, we have some vague examples that we see. So using language like we're hoping or anticipating, we encourage, we're discussing, soon we are planning to. All of that language is really quite vague and doesn't demonstrate what we're looking for in terms of making progress to a specific citation. So really, again, focusing on the actual plan. What is your plan, and what have you done specifically creating implementation timelines, how you're addressing the issue, and then any support you have, even if it's an email that, you've scheduled a meeting with this person and here's the email to document that if it's something, that's earlier in the process. So again, just trying to be as specific as possible is very important when you're responding to your survey report. And then the process for submitting your survey responses, if you haven't done that before, it's through Fabric. And at the time that you're submitting your response, you need to also send an email to the Accreditation Services office and then to your lead surveyor so that they're aware your response has been uploaded. Lisa mentioned this, and I think it's actually on the next two slides, but all ASHP requested reports by the ASO office must be submitted and responded to avoid discontinuation of your accreditation of your program. So very important if we're reaching out or if the office is reaching out for additional documentation or completion of your survey, it's very important that you respond and you complete those requests. So key takeaways just in general from our time this afternoon. Make sure you know the standard. Lisa did a good job going through the elements of the standard and letting you guys know that we're in the process of revising the standard. So hopefully next December we'll be able to share more information and more specificity around that. But knowing the standard is so important as you're designing or rethinking your program or enhancing or optimizing your program. And then Lisa went through all of those website resources that are available to you. Check those out because they're updated regularly. Get in there periodically and see what's new. There may be new information or new documents that will help you in your program, make your life easier. Just a reminder that the accreditation of your program ensures that we have safety for the public and we're ensuring quality of the training provided. Also utilize the program resources and reach out to ASHP for assistance. There's lots of people at the office who can help you, and even other people on your survey team, your practitioner surveyors, guest surveyors, oftentimes will help as well. Ask questions of your site surveys, they're there to help, and just a reminder that we want you to succeed. So finally, a couple of reminders here. Again, please respond to all requests that you get from the office because it can impact or will impact, your lack of response will impact your ability to remain accredited or for your program to remain accredited. And then also update your ASHP directory pages if you are an accredited or a candidate program. And with that, we do want to thank you. I think you've heard it a few times today, but we're so appreciative of you all and your commitment to training programs and training technicians, backbone of our practice, and we really appreciate your work and the time that you spend ensuring that we're able to take good care of our patients because we're producing high quality, competent trainees. So with that, Tate and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have for us. Yes, ma'am, you can come up to the microphone there in the middle aisle if you don't mind.
I can super loud. Oh. Yeah, right. Teacher voice. One of the things that I'm most concerned about is response rate to surveys. I have so many surveys. I send out so much communication, both in person, via email. Is there like a line that you guys have, like response rate that's expected? And same thing with like, I wrote it down and my brain is just between now and then. But it's one of those things that it's not dependent on us, so to speak, but our survey of our audience or our students or our employers, those kind of things.
So you're talking the standard 14 of getting the employers' feedback, the students' feedback?
Any kind of feedback in general. I mean, I feel like we ask for a lot of it and we get back 10%, 20%. I mean, I think that's normal. Yeah. But what are y'all's expectations there?
We do not have expectations on response rates. Okay. Like, we have expectations that you have a process and you are working on trying to improve and get information that is going to be valuable to improve your process. So I think you have to figure out what is the best way to get that feedback. One of the things, if you are trying to go to experiential sites even, and when you're doing those inspections, talk to that preceptor, that pharmacist in charge, that tech that's being that preceptor, to say, hey, you had the student, how were they last time? What feedback, what did they miss? I mean, even if you document that yourself as part of your assessment, that's still the whole concept, and the why here is to give programs feedback or information back so they can modify their program. So there isn't, if you get a 10% response rate, you're trying. That is fully compliant from our side of things. Okay. But it's just a matter of how do you best try to get that feedback in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm a new program director of a community college in Detroit, Michigan, and it took ASHP about 3 months to get my change in the computer system. So I'm not sure if I'll have my survey email because it just got updated on the website. So if someone can help me look into making sure I receive all communications.
What I would suggest in that space, if you did, the survey went out on Friday.
Okay.
So if it's not in your, or yesterday, yes. So if it's not in your email in the next day or so, making sure you check your junk mail, just email ASD and just say, hey, I didn't get the survey. I'm the new program director. We appreciate the program directors that are conscientious and trying to do that. One of our biggest challenges is that we have program directors turnover a lot amongst programs, and we lose track. Like we're trying to figure out who's in charge. So just email the ASD office and say, hey, I'm a new program director. I don't think my information got updated in time. Can I get the link? And the ASD will be able to get it to you.
Thank you, and thank you for this meeting because this is very helpful for me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
Question about the new standards and you're looking for feedback. If you're in candidate status, do you have the opportunity to do that, or is it only if you're accredited?
We'll take all feedback.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this is, I think if you're in candidate status now and looking at the standards and go, I don't know why this is here. This seems redundant. This is stupid. This should be added. Like, you're probably in the heat of it now. Send that feedback to say, I don't understand why, or this should be added, or this should be taken out. Our overarching premise right now is trying to simplify the standards, to make them easier. There's many times where you can get cited in 3 different buckets for the same thing, and we tried not to do that, but we're really trying to get away from that piece and eliminating some of that work.
And the next question I have is in regards to the simulation section of the accreditation. Can you speak a little bit more to the types of formative and summative feedback that you like to see given to the learners that meets really what you're looking for? Like, how many examples do you need per number of hours, per activities, and how what you're looking for?
We can both try. There's not a specific amount required per hour of training for the formative and summative feedback. There should be documentation for us to review that the formative feedback in the moment at the time the activity or the simulation is being performed, that we are able to view that and see that feedback is being provided. And then at the conclusion of a specific training piece, that there's some summative evaluation or summative feedback that's been documented that we can review. I don't know, Tate, what do you want to add to that?
I think there just needs, so many programs we look at say they do simulation, and then it's just like a check that it got done. And so understanding that there's checkoffs in that process, and as you start getting to the more complex stuff, reminding the students that they need to anticipate their needs of gathering their supplies ahead of time, or how did they, do their math? When did they do their math? Even their process and how they make things, and just having some random notes on some forms of saying, showing that this is the feedback that they received, is really what we're looking for. And the same thing in the experiential side of things of what didn't they do well in the retail pharmacy? What didn't they do well when doing a ADC load? What steps did what steps are they consistently missing to remind them that they need to do some things? Does that help? It's different than a lot of times the pharmacy residency thought process component, because a lot of this is stepwise approach. But when you start thinking about technicians and their ability to, what is the proper order for them to do something in, even though that if they do it in the wrong order, it's still, they got A and they got Z right, so what happens in the rest didn't quite go as smooth. And if there's something that needs to be more efficient, or how you coach them to be more efficient when they're doing a process, it's that type of feedback that we're looking for.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Good.
Good, thank you.
Good. Quick question. So, with employer-based training, because in Michigan it's kind of shifting over, a lot of people are doing more employer-based training. With the didactic, I know you have that one component for the coursework. With their simulation and experiential, those should be documented separately, because if somebody's already working and if they're already hired, working at a pharmacy or something like that. And I know in the past, experiential always had to be separate from your simulation. So that's one of the things you still have to document separately, correct?
Correct. They need to be documented separately. You need to have a process to have simulation separate from experiential, recognizing the quote lab space in a employer-based location may be the same, and that's okay. So it's no different than having someone watch someone over their shoulder as they're doing whatever process in a simulated type of approach. It may be in an IV room, and it may be the last hood that's not really used that often, and they're still getting that same experience, but it's the live IV room hood. But it does need to be in that sequential components.
So technically they could be the same, but it just has to be documented differently. So let's say if somebody's working from 6 to 3, okay, and then that's their experiential hours. Whether they're working externship, but it's still their technically job.
Yeah. So the only piece that I would say that you have to be mindful of is that you can do a, non-continuous experiential type of experience where you can teach in the didactic realm of retail pharmacy stuff, simulate that, do some retail pharmacy work, and then go back through and still go back to some didactics of other things. You can do things in not all didactic gets done, then simulation, and then experiential. You can have experiential thrown in. It's just that the experiential time that you're giving them credit for, they need to have had the simulation for that task ahead of time. That really is the only piece to that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're running you're doing a hybrid, especially if you're doing a hybrid program. So if they're Monday through Friday, they're working, and then that's Saturday or Sunday or whatever that day is, then that could be set aside, and that could actually be their simulation.
Yeah, and there's nothing from our standpoint that says you are paying them or not paying them. If the tasks they're doing while they're working are appropriately sequenced, where they learned it didactically, they had some simulation on it, and they're appropriately trained, and now they're practicing it and doing it, then, and it happens to be their job, that's fine.
You can document it.
Yeah, you can document it that way.
Okay, because in the past, they'd always said that they have to be separate.
The payment component we don't care. We don't care. It's just that the simulation, it's no different than training a new hire tech outside of the program. Like, you train them to pull the order off the shelves, pull it out of, going to load up the ADC. You train them, they practice it in front of someone a couple different times, even though it may be real stuff, before you let them do it regularly on their own. That practice is a simulation.
Okay.
Them regularly doing it on their own is their experiential.
Okay, and then you just document.
And then you just document that, and you document that feedback. And even on the experiential side, you should still have periodically someone checking if they're loading an ADC. Are they doing it right? Someone's periodically spot checking them as a preceptor in that work.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.